Thank you, colleagues. And just before I do invite our new senators to sign the book, I do want to begin today's caucus meeting, as we do with all our federal Labor meetings, and that is with an acknowledgement of country, an acknowledgement of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples on whose land we meet and gather on each occasion that we come to Canberra, and be very mindful of that in our deliberations and discussions in our caucus today. I would like to go straight now to the very important work of formally admitting our new Labor senators, representing both Western Australia and Victoria. It is a very big note for us all, and I'm just purely on an alphabetical reason. I'm going to go with the state of Victoria first. And please give a very warm, generous Labor welcome to Senator. Thank you, Senator White. And now a very warm welcome to our newest senator, our third senator for Western Australia, which is very exciting. Please give a big shout out to Fatima Payman. I think there's a couple more photos to happen.
There you go. There you go, on each side. Big push, yeah. That's his job to be pushing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I'd like to just hand across to the leader for his report.
Well, thanks very much. And firstly, I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and commit on behalf of the government to the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. And we'll have more to say. We will have more to say about that at the Gama Festival that I'll be attending along with many members of the team there on the weekend on Friday and Saturday. That will be an important event. Welcome to Fatima and to Linda. To get a third senator from WA, I spoke to Fatima during the campaign, and I did say I was confident about 3 in WA. You could feel the sense of change that was there throughout that great state, but it took a significant campaign, including a Senate campaign, to get that third seat across the line. And in Linda White, I am so pleased that I have a dear friend of mine for decades. We're both very young, but we met very young. And Linda has been an extraordinary contributor to the union movement through the ASU, particularly for women's work and for equity and social justice issues She also has, of course, been a member of the ALP National Executive of long-standing, done great work with Chifley in terms of getting some of our think tank really playing a leading role there. And in Linda and Fatima, we have two outstanding additions to the team. So welcome. But indeed, I think we've got a great team, and I welcome all of you here the day before Parliament begins. It'll be a big deal tomorrow. Particularly, there are many people who've been here for a while without having sat on a different side of the chamber. And believe me, as someone who's done both, one is a lot better than the other. But it's also an enormous privilege, and it's one that we should never take for granted, and we should cherish each and every day. We have an incredible responsibility as the political party in Australia that seeks positive change in the interests of working people, that seeks to change existing power relationships in society in favour of more equality, in favour of fairness, to make a difference in the way that we legislate and the way that the government acts each and every day. And the government has, it's fair to say, in its first 2 months that we celebrated just a day or so ago on the 21st, we have certainly hit the ground running. And we've hit the ground running because Labor governments are passionate about changing things for the better. We're elected with a very significant platform, one in which you will be reminded of with the Governor-General's speech before the Parliament tomorrow when Parliament opens. That Governor-General's speech will outline a government of ambition, a government which sees it has a responsibility to break Australia out of the inertia that the former government was stuck in. We often came to the Parliament without much to do in terms of an agenda before the Parliament. This Labor government will not be like that, and we've hit the ground running already. Already we've made the changes that we made to the minimum wage. I said during the election campaign when I held up my $1 coin that people on $20.33 deserved an extra $1 an hour, which is what we were talking about. And indeed the Fair Work Commission granted $1.05 an hour with a 5.2% increase. There's no doubt that that wouldn't have occurred had the change of government not happened on May 21st. We've already submitted our nationally determined contribution, our climate change target, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change of 43%, consistent with what we took to the election. That has meant that we've been able to walk through the door of international discussions, not just about climate, but about trade and economic relationships, about our social relationships, whether it be at the Quad Leaders meeting, whether it be with Indonesia, whether it be the NATO summit, where European countries welcomed the change in our position, and where we've restarted negotiations for a European trade agreement that's very much in the interests of Australia. That change has made an enormous difference. Climate change is a national security issue. That is well understood throughout the world, but nowhere more so than with our Pacific neighbours. And when we met at the Pacific Island Forum just a couple of weeks ago, our change position was included in the communique, and it was very much welcomed going forward, and it's made an enormous difference. As well, we've dealt with the challenges that come to government. One of those is, of course, the consequences of having a decade of inaction on energy policy means we've had a decade of a failure of investment in new clean energy, because how can you invest if you're a business when you don't have any certainty going forward, when there's no policy framework? Business has been crying out for that framework, but we've had to deal with the consequences of that inaction, and Chris Bowen's done a remarkable job in dealing with that challenge. In addition, we have the ongoing challenge, of course, of dealing with COVID. And Mark Butler has been working with the health authorities, and I've been working with states and territories to deal with the consequences of COVID, making sure that we get those messages out there, making sure that people continue to do the right thing, get their boosters if they're eligible, making sure that that support is available, and that's why we've extended support for the hospital network beyond that which was envisaged by the former government. We of course have also had to deal with natural disasters. All of these things are not unrelated. The floods, where many people in Susan Templeman's electorate have been hit with 3 floods and a bushfire in the last few years. The consequences of that, we were there providing support earlier than ever before. The earlier deployment of the ADF, earlier deployment of state support, the support that goes from the 2 levels of government, but also earlier engagement of support that is provided by the Commonwealth with those payments. And Bill Shorten was straight on to the government services to make sure that that support was available really early, and Murray Watt has had an enormous amount to deal with between that and dealing with responsibly the foot and mouth disease issue that we know is affecting Indonesia. We were there, up on the ground, making a difference, and then making a difference here. Not trying to create opportunistic positions like our opponents, but working with the National Farmers Federation, the Northern Cattlemen's Association, the sector that were directly affected, and doing action in consultation with them. Labor governments don't just occupy the space. We're here to make a difference, and this week we'll have legislation, at least 18 pieces of legislation, including legislation for our climate change target, legislation for 10 days paid domestic and family violence leave, something we've spoken about for a long period of time, legislation to respond to the Aged Care Royal Commission. Why do you have a Royal Commission and then just sit on the recommendations? That's what the former government did. And legislation to create Jobs and Skills Australia, which is important in the lead up to the Jobs and Skills Summit that will be held here in a little over a month's time here in the Parliament. In addition to that, in coming weeks we'll have childcare legislation. We'll be acting on our urgent care clinics, putting them in place. We will, by the end of the year, have a legislation on the Anti-Corruption Commission. We will as well be advancing the voice to Parliament enshrined in our Constitution. In all of this is the what, the how is also important. We want to change the tone of politics in this country. We want to be more inclusive. We want to make sure there's less shouting and more delivery. The former government sat around and talked about how do we wedge the other side of politics. We're not really interested in that. What we're interested in is getting solutions to people for the challenges which are there, and we will be doing that. We will also, of course, be dealing with the legacy that we've inherited. $1 trillion of debt with not much to show for it is a real challenge for the people that we represent, who are suffering under a cost of living pressures, and we know that that is the case. But we know as well that you can't continue to spend money without having consequences. We want value for money, which is why we'll be going through the budget line by line, getting rid of the waste and the rorts that we've seen that's cost so much, not just in terms of financially, but as cost in our humanity as well. Schemes like Robodebt have cost us as a society, but as well, of course, sports rorts and all of these things that were baked into the budget we will be going through going forward. I think if we needed a final reminder of the legacy that we inherit, it's come out on the weekend with the report into what occurred on May the 21st. And actions by a government are breaching all convention, breaching all principles and breaching everything that is decent, trying to scare people into a vote on polling day and trying to trash the separation that's there between government and the independent public service during caretaker convention period. This is unprecedented for a government to act like that on polling day for what we know now is that the then Prime Minister gave a statement before any public statement had been given by the department. This is a guy who used to say that he wouldn't give answers to anything about these issues, that they were on water matters. And here we had an unprincipled action by a government that was desperate and was prepared to do anything whatsoever to try to retain power. And it was an appalling act, and it should be, they should be held to account for that appalling act on the final day. That trashing of convention, which is the way that politics has to operate if we're going to have faith in the political processes. But it was just one last example of a government that will be defined by its seeking of division in society. Our task is very different. Our task is to unite people, to look for common ground and common purpose, and that's something that I want this caucus to do. This caucus has such a critical role to play. 103 members, I think, strong, and that makes an enormous difference. We have a great responsibility to the people who have sent us here, people who need a Labor government to make a difference to their lives. And I'm very confident that over coming weeks, months and years, that is precisely what we will be doing. So welcome to Canberra, welcome back, and enjoy tomorrow as the final thing. This is the 4th time since the Second World War and the 5th time in 100 years that Labor has formed government from opposition. We're only able to do that because of your hard work, because of your commitment, because of your principles, because of the people, the party members and volunteers and union members who've sent you here, who do so much work and will never be interested in appearing in a public forum. We have a great responsibility to those people to really be the best government that we can possibly be and to make them proud. I'm very proud to lead this party and to lead this government, and I hope that we make the people who've sent us here collectively proud each and every day. Thanks a lot.